Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy start to Slice Friday morning over here as we prepare to address the topic of today, which is, did Hong Kong just save the old coins there? Did it just save Bitcoin? Well, of course, anytime China gets involved when it comes to Bitcoin or crypto or anything like that, a lot of things do happen within the old sphere. And of course, we want to be going over the major areas to be aware of and what that actually means for price. And that is going to be the focus of today. And I suspect that before we get right on into it, I should humbly request that if you do find this content valuable or in some way meaningful, please do consider liking and also hitting the old bell icon. And we can just jump right into it right here, right now. Starting off with the daily time frame on CME for the Gaussian channel. Now, this was a focus or a big focus for us coming into this week, as Bitcoin was essentially teeter-tottering right around the mean band, which was hovering at about 27,000 bucks or so. And then Bitcoin obviously got its first closure below there, I would say decisively on Wednesday. Now, with that said, we do expect a range to essentially develop between that closure and, of course, the bottom side of the Gaussian channel, which is currently hovering in around low $25,000 territory. So ultimately, I am still looking at this as very much relevant. And while yesterday there was a nice bounce based off of potentially that news coming out from Hong Kong embracing Bitcoin and some other cryptocurrencies as well, we could also just as easily say that that was based off of a bounce on the bottom side of the HPDR range. So over here, I believe that was on the 4-hour time frame, as Bitcoin did kind of find its footing and then put in a bit of a bounce intraday. And that's kind of where we're at right now. And yes, can this bounce continue up a little bit more? Certainly as well. However, same thing as yesterday, as long as Bitcoin is below on a closing basis 26,650, downside still remains a little bit more likely here. That is to say that if Bitcoin could pop back up above 26,650, close above there on a meaningful time frame, preferably a 12-hour or a daily, then I would be calling that a bear trap, in Bitcoin very likely to pop back up north of $27,000 and continue on with its sideways and up trudge here. But until that happens, still, I would be saying sideways and down, the more likely of these scenarios, as we do see Bitcoin actually already did give a bit of an attempt at 26,650. Looks like the high of the day thus far is 26,628, but so far rejection from that level. However, not anything super decisive there as well. But going back to the charts over here and bringing up my notes yet again, I do want to reference now that the daily is going to be playing hand in hand with the weekly here. And keep in mind that the weekly does close for CME later tonight at, I believe it is 7 or 8 p.m. Eastern time. And if we go over to the weekly, we can see that Bitcoin still put in a range between the top side of the Gaussian channel and the mean band. Now, the mean band has been slowly moving down, as is natural, and is currently coming in where? Well, low $25,000 as well. So I am starting to look at this as, while Bitcoin, probably does have, a little bit of a swipe lower, I do think it's quite likely that we might just see a bit of a move lower, make everyone very, very scared for a second, and then pop back on up from that low $25,000 region. Whether that dips a little bit lower towards 24.8 or just swipes the 25,200-ish region, somewhere within that range would kind of make sense. And then very likely an attempt for a big bounce from that region. And then of course we can play the same game on the weekly here as we were looking at on the daily as well, meaning that I really can't be looking for any significant extension to the downside, maybe even all the way down to 21,000 bucks until Bitcoin starts to close below the mean band right here. Again, that would be about 25,000 bucks on a weekly closing basis, very specifically. Anyways, moving on now, I want to go back into the HPDR ranges. We haven't really spoken about the 4-hour, but that was the bounce yesterday that we saw. More importantly for right now, the 12-hour time frame is still operating below the median right here. And yes, when I see something like this, and of course volatility also increasing off these lows, I am more inclined to be looking at this one as continuation to the downside of that HPDR range low, which is where? 25,300, as they all just continue to come in around the same regions, and the daily also showing a little bit lower towards that 24.8 region right here, with the median coming in around about 27. So if you wanted to wait for full-on bear trap potential, 27,000 bucks would be the area of interest. Until then, I'd really be looking at 26,650 as the big one, and meaning that if Bitcoin closed above there, especially on a daily time frame, we're very likely to see this sideways and up continue. But until then, bear traps are just a figment of the imagination. It's just not worthy of talking about because it's not the most likely thing to be happening, obviously. Anyways, moving into it, I do want to now cover stochastic momentum. We can start off over here on, we'll get to the 2-day a little bit later, but we'll start over here on the daily, and the daily is about to freshly turn down with any sort of a closure today, below 26,500, which Bitcoin's like, It's pretty close to right now. I mean, you know, it could theoretically close above there. Obviously, it's certainly not out of the question. But again, another thing on the same side of the equation of saying, hey, as long as Bitcoin's below about 26,650 to 26,500, downside is just more likely. It's more likely to dip its toesy woesies into the deeper $25,000 territory. Moving on, and this is also alongside a very low volatility regime. So, does it twist down and then we see volatility expand? Again, another good indication we probably do see low $25,000 territory. 12-hour time frame is going to be also showing downside as long as Bitcoin's below 27,150. 6-hour time frame is also going to be showing, it's going to be showing upside above 26,200, but I believe that's kind of the odd man out here. 4-hour time frame is going to be showing actually also upside above 26,100, and hourly time frame should be turning down as well below 26,500. So we do see a bit of a bifurcation between the lower term time frames and the in the higher term time frames here, but kind of referencing it on CME, I'm just seeing if there's anything different. And actually no. What it would suggest, however, is that if we do start to see Bitcoin come back down and close below 26,200, then all timeframes will be in concert with each other. And at that point, that's probably when the move actually really starts to, get its momentum going in that case, and resolving with that downside price action. So if you're looking for a bit of a timing mechanism, that could potentially help. Of course, we could also reference our volatility indicators, which actually bring up our 4-hour HPDR V2 over here, which is actually going back into a contraction phase, which means that it's not going to be that helpful right now, unfortunately. Anyways, I did want to once again bring up the 2-day time frame setup over here. Let me just see if I can find it very, very quickly. Yeah, it's a 2-day volatility versus stochastic momentum setup. I won't go through the full rigmarole on this one, but I do just want to point out that the 2-day time frame is closing tonight, and the current stochastic momentum pivot is where 26,850. It's a little bit above where I would kind of be considering this a bear trap at 26,650. But again, above those sort of levels, you're going to start to see things turn back up here, and that would be a good indication of a bear trap. But until then, again, below those levels, it's just more likely to move to the downside than not. And based off the stats over here, I won't go through the full rigmarole on them, but we'd be looking at we'd be looking at probably like a dump somewhere around like the upper teens, which would put Bitcoin somewhere around about $25,000. The average of these moves has been about 27%, but with the standard deviation about 9, that gives you a range between like 17 to 18% all the way up to mid 30s essentially. So on the lower end, you can see that $25,000 region hit, fulfill a test of the Gaussian channel that we saw over here, as well as the HPDR, and fulfill a statistically based narrative over here. Sorry, that's the wrong chart. That's my actual trading chart, which is nice. But yes, going back into it right here, that would be the big one to be mindful of. And of course, that would be a good place for me to be leaving off on this particular video. Kind of short and sweet, but I figured there's not like, a whole hell of a lot of new things to really be going over. I guess we could just very briefly reference the Dixie chart. I'm still generally looking for a continuation here. Maybe not this week. I think it's probably seen its high for this week, but coming into next week, I would still be looking somewhere around north of 105 as the weekly does play off the bottom side of the Gaussian channel, and the monthly, put in a nice low right here. I do still think that it can work its way up to, $105.5, maybe $106. And then we'll come back to it after that. But does that put downwards pressure on risk on assets? It's generally what people are looking for right there. I wouldn't necessarily make that full correlation, but in this case, kind of does play with the analysis. So perhaps that's what we do see. And I think, that's a good place for me to be leaving off. With that said, I'd like to wish you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.